News at 5 starts right now.
What Casey Anthony secretly told detectives in the car the day of her most recent arrest. Good evening, I'm Jacqueline London.
And I'm Mike Garofalo. We're getting never-before-heard insight into the case against Casey and her interaction with detectives, including why she told police she'd love to help them, but only under one condition. That's just one of literally dozens of new details released today in the hundreds of documents made public. Plus, could it even be true? Comments made by a private investigator about an alleged inappropriate relationship between Casey and her attorney, Jose Baez. Tony Pipitone and Mike DeForest and the rest of the Local 6 team have been poring over the new documents and sorting fact from fiction. First to Mike and what happened in the back of that police car.
Well, Mike, back on October 14th, right after that grand jury handed down its indictment for murder against Casey Anthony, deputies in unmarked patrol cars were trying to arrest her, but she was zooming all over the county, switching from vehicle to vehicle. When deputies finally took Casey into custody, she tried to explain her little stunt.
Indictment will be filed here in open court under seal.
Shortly after a grand jury indicted Casey Anthony for murder, Sky 6 spotted Casey and her mom leaving attorney Jose Baez's office and climbing into Cindy's SUV. For a short time, we watched as the two tried to avoid media trucks by cutting through a shopping center parking lot. We then watched as Cindy drove under this overpass on the 417.
Got another car. They pulled the switcheroo.
That's when Casey jumped into another SUV driven by her bail bondsman. They then sped off again and, according to investigators, nearly ran some unmarked sheriff's vehicles off the roads. But when deputies finally caught up to Casey, she claimed she was not trying to run away from the law. That was us trying to counteract the media from following us down to the jail, because our only intention was to take me down to the jail to surrender me before this happened. While sitting in the back of this sheriff's car, a detective asked Casey if she had any interest in helping them. I have had interest in helping law enforcement from the beginning, Casey said. Unfortunately, my hands were literally tied, and I was put in a position where someone's trying to trick a confession out of me, and that's not going to happen. When asked whether she would be willing to sit down and talk with the FBI, Casey said, "I have an open mind when it comes to things. I'll take this as far as I need to prove my innocence." But Casey insisted that Jose Baez be present. "I can honestly say that whatever questions you ask, I will consider before I answer anything. I should be able to speak to my attorney before I provide any sort of answer." And shortly after that, Casey Anthony did invoke her right to counsel, asked to have an attorney present. The conversation ended. Detectives turned off the tape recorder. We need to point out, despite what Casey said to detectives that day of her most recent arrest, she and her attorney have not yet met with investigators face-to-face. Reporting live in Orange County, Mike DeForest, Local 6.
So, Mike, while Casey was in the patrol car, did detectives try to get any more answers from her?
They certainly tried before she said she wanted to have an attorney present. In fact, it was a different set of detectives questioning her this time. She kind of has a disdain for the original group that's been questioning her. So this new team kind of tried to play good cop and try to get on her good side and say, "Oh, hey, Casey, we'll listen to what you have to say." But she wasn't biting. As you heard there, she decided she wanted to have her attorney present and immediately shut up.
All right. Thank you, Mike. And Casey's defense attorney, Jose Baez, says the new information today doesn't mean anything. He says, quote, "We are going to reserve comment on discovery releases until those times when the discovery is of some importance to the real evidence in this case."
Now, some outlandish statements from private investigator Jim Hoover. The documents released today include what Hoover told investigators and what he was really after. Investigative reporter Tony Pipitone has that part of today's developments. Tony, what was he after?
Well, money, it turns out. Jim Hoover admits he was secretly photographing and videotaping the Anthony family's private moments so he could sell memorabilia, as he put it, of this family's tragedy. Jim Hoover befriended the Anthony family after he helped disperse some of the protesters who were harassing them last summer while Casey was still out on bond. But Hoover admits he had another agenda, making money off media he was secretly collecting. He says he videotaped George and Cindy Anthony at a church service, first claiming he was playing with the camera, but later admitting he was going to make some money. "I have to tell myself it's going to be memorabilia," he told investigators during a taped interview 1 week after Kaylee's remains were found. He also said he secretly took pictures of Lee Anthony being fingerprinted by the FBI, something they did so they could identify or rule out any fingerprints that might have been found on items recovered near Kaylee's body. Hoover was never paid by the family, but investigator Dominic Casey did have a contract with them, Hoover says. Casey has told Local 6 the Anthony family feels betrayed by Hoover.
Absolutely. He's just another one that came in under false pretenses to capitalize on the demise of Kaylee Marie Anthony.
Hoover and Casey admit they looked for a body near the woods where Kaylee was ultimately found, but Hoover says Casey never went deep enough into the woods to even find the bones. And he does describe an outburst by Cindy Anthony after her son Lee removed this cross, which was placed in front of the family house. It wound up in the backyard, where he says Cindy took a baseball bat and started smashing the cross, cursing sheriff's investigators and bounty hunter Leonard Padilla and others. That was just a sign of the stress the Anthonys were under after the body was found and their home was searched by deputies. Hoover also said George Anthony was depressed and considered taking his own life many months before his suicide attempt in January, Jacqueline.
And Tony, Hoover also told detectives that he heard Casey Anthony and Jose Baez had some inappropriate contact in the Orange County Jail. You looked into it and no way, it didn't happen.
No way. Hoover said that Dominic Casey witnessed lawyer and client eat one piece of licorice string that was strung through a hole in a glass partition during a jail visit, as if they were about to kiss through the glass. Sounds sweet and everything, but a big problem with that false story, there is no glass partition at the jail, so it just did not happen as Hoover described it. Just more bad information that just keeps getting out there in this case.
A lot of rumors and innuendo in this case from the beginning.
Exactly. Stick to the facts.
All right, Tony, thank you. And never before seen video of Casey and Kaylee Anthony. We don't know exactly when it was taken, but we presume it was taken months before little Kaylee disappeared because of the length of Casey's hair and the apparent age of Kaylee. Listen, and you hear George call out to Kaylee.
Hey, look. The keys.
And earlier in that tape, Cindy Anthony is heard. She's apparently the one shooting the video. We found it on YouTube, but we don't know where it came from. Keep it right here for continuing coverage. We are revealing new developments every half hour. Coming up at 5:30. New evidence that backs up what meter reader Roy Kronk says about finding Kaylee's remains. Then at 6, how deputies used Casey's boyfriend to basically spy on the Anthony family and find out if they were telling the truth. Remember, you can catch up on any development you may have missed at clickorlando.com.